Okay, so I think we're about ready to get the show on the road for scheduling for supervisors. And we'll be logging on I will be logging on to my web portal using a generic supervisory level account. And of course, anyone with supervisory privileges is going to have access to the same employee-based screens. So that employee drop-down menu is where we're going to go to request time off or request overtime, or perhaps to arrange schedule switches with other supervisors. Supervisors will also have the same schedule views that everyone else has, which will include daily, weekly, and monthly personal calendars and department-wide schedules. Supervisors will be able to sign up for extra duty jobs. But our focus for this afternoon is mainly what is found under the supervisor drop-down menu. Within this menu, we will be able to view and approve time off and overtime entries. We'll be able to assign employees to various jobs, whether that's an area that they're working in or a particular type of work status that they will carry throughout their shift. And we can also fill staffing shortages a number of different ways, either by posting available overtime on a sign-up board, generating a call list where we will just manually call eligible people to work or offer overtime opportunities. Or we can use text messaging. And so we'll talk about those methods. Now, along with the supervisor menu, there are some additional functions available off of the daily schedule, and they appear anytime you click on an individual or if you click on the green button for whichever shift you want to work with. Now, if I was to click on someone like Robert Novak's name on my day shift, over on the left, it's going to show me some common functions I might need to apply to that individual. Maybe I want to place them on a day off because they called out sick, or I may need to adjust their work hours. This is what we call our Schedule Actions menu. So we'll take a look at a few key functions available on this list. Moving back to the supervisor drop-down menu, the first thing that we're going to take a look at this afternoon is approving time off. And we're going to do that using this screen here called Manage Time Off. And from the screen, we'll have the ability to set the date range. We will have filters available. So if we just want to focus on one particular individual's time off request or even a specific group's time off requests, I will have that option. By default, the filtering will be set up so that you can see all time off requests that you have the ability to approve or deny. Let's click on the search button to see those entries. And there's only one entry for October 6th for the night shift. Over to the right, we can see the hours being deducted, even the balance for that particular time bank. Now, if I would like to see other time off requests that may have already been approved on that same day, I can switch the status to show all entries. Now, when I click on the search button, if there were other approved time off entries for October 6th, they would be displayed along with this one. And so depending on how many people have off on that particular day and what your staffing requirements are, you will either approve or deny that entry. Under the status, you have four options. You can either approve the entry, you can select approve with stipulation, which is like a conditional approval, meaning we're going to approve it, but if something else happens on the schedule, we may reserve the right to deny that request. You can deny it, or you can delete it completely from the system. We'll go ahead and approve this item, and we'll click on the Save button below. Now, as soon as that entry has been approved, or even if it was denied, an email will be sent to the requesting employee, notifying them of the change in status for their time off request. Now, I'd like to move over to the daily schedule for a moment. And we're going to move over to October 6th, which is the request that I just approved. And as you can see, it is now displayed in green, whereas the request may have been displayed in a bluish color. And you'll notice that I can click on that entry, and on the Schedule Actions menu, I now have the ability to change time off or delete time off. Let's select Change Time Off. And here I can adjust the reason type or even the approval level. I can even delete the item right from here. And so the purpose of showing you this screen is, as you receive email notifications from people within your departments or squads or whichever types of groupings you currently have, the notification will already tell you who is requesting time off and the date. So if it's easier, just navigate to that day on the daily schedule, click on the entry, and use Change Time Off to approve it right from here. Okay. So the Manage Time Off screen or clicking on the entry will both accomplish the same thing. It's just a matter of finding which one works best for you. Let's click on Return to Daily Schedule. And so going back to what I was saying, by clicking on the entry, if you already have the date, you might find that the more convenient way of doing it, especially if you have multiple shifts you may have to look at in order to determine whether or not that person can take the day off. Okay, we're going to do the same thing for overtime entries. Let's select Manage Overtime, and you'll notice the filtering options are the same ones available for time off. You can choose the date range, or you can filter by employee, reason, or groups, or click on the search button to see all pending overtime entries. Switch over to All and click on the search button. In fact, I'll even push the date back because I'm sure I have some entries. Here's a request from October 2nd. Use the drop-down menu to approve or possibly deny that item. And once again, once you save these entries, whether it's time off or overtime, the person that made the request will receive an email confirmation letting them know of the status of that item. Let's go back to the daily schedule, this time for October 2nd. And again, you can highlight on any valid time off or overtime entry to modify it. Perhaps the hours need to be modified or even the pay type. The entry can also be approved or denied through this form. And so, since the details of the overtime entry will be included in any email notifications you get, you may choose to go directly to the day, click on the item, and modify it using your Schedule Actions menu. Now, along with approving time off or overtime entries, you may have to post some of those onto the schedule. So in the event someone calls out sick, click on the name of the individual who called out, and using the Schedule Actions menu, which is now customized for the functions you can apply to that individual, select Request Time Off. This will bring up the same form that you might fill out for yourself. Okay? It has the name of the person taking off, the dates, the shift, if that individual is taking the entire day, which should be most likely the case if it's for sick time. Leave it set to entire day, and then select sick from the drop-down menu. Now, under the status section, you may just apply it as approved sick time. Click on the Save button, and the time off will be applied on the schedule. Now, for overtime, in most cases, you're going to require your users anyone that might report to you to submit those entries themselves, and you will approve them. There are certain situations where you might create an overtime entry for the people in your group or department. And normally that's going to be because we have to follow a certain protocol for filling staffing shortages. So we're going to talk a little bit about that now. And we're going to move over to the supervisor section to do that. And so to fill staffing shortages, we're going to recommend using open shifts. Now, in the first example I'm going to show you, we're going to use an open shift to determine where we have the staffing issue, and we're going to notify all eligible employees via text. After I show you an example how that's done, we're going to take a look at how do you fill it using just a general call list, or if the overtime is scheduled out far enough, you can choose to just post it online. So using the Add Update Open Shift screen, we're going to select the shift that we need coverage on, the skill set of the type of person we need to fill that position. Some common skill sets found might be patrol or officer, sergeant or supervisor. Select the type of person you need. Verify the date or date ranges for the open shifts you're about to create. Since I'm just filling in only one day, I'll leave it set to October 4th. My from and to hours will be based on whatever shift I selected, but I have the option to modify that. Maybe you split your shifts. For my example, I'll leave it set to the standard 12-hour shift for patrol nights. And from the reason drop-down menu, using my available overtime codes, I'm going to select the reason for the overtime I'm creating. You're free to add additional comments into that overtime item. It is not a required field, but it is information that would be made available to anyone that receives the text message. We're going to leave Send Notification Options marked, which is the default setting, and we'll click on the Save button. Now, at this point, you've created the open shift. Now you have to choose how you're going to distribute that work. Your two options are to use general notifications, which means that that open shift will be available on a sign-up board. So at this point, all we're doing is emailing everyone in the department, letting them know that open shifts have been created. They can then log on to the application and sign up for those open shifts. Now, if you use that method, they will not be automatically awarded the open shift necessarily. You, as supervisors, will have the ability to view all requests, and you will be able to award those open shifts based on your criteria. For this example, I'm going to switch over to what we call replacement policy notification. This is for any of you who will be using text messaging to alert people of overtime opportunities. After you switch over to replacement policy notification, you'll see several drop-down menus and checkboxes and buttons. We're going to make those go away by clicking on the Advanced button. You'll be left with only one drop-down menu. This drop-down list will include the types of overtime scenarios you're dealing with. Do I need officers? Do I need supervisors? Whatever the case might be, you're going to select your groups based on whatever staffing situation you're dealing with, and you're going to click on the Find Now button. This will compile a list of people who are able to work during the shift you need coverage on. In fact, the list will already be provided to you in the correct order. Now, that order might be based on seniority. It might be based on just a rotating list, in which case you're now just being given a snapshot of where everyone is at this moment in time. Some of you might organize your list based on hours worked. In any case, the list should already be sorted for you, and at the very bottom, we're going to Send to Mobile. Now, after you click on Send to Mobile, everyone on that list will receive a text message. They do not have to have our mobile app installed. In that text message, it will include the shift details of what we need coverage on, and it will include a link. If you click on the link, or if they click on the link, it will bring them to a very simply formatted screen. And again, they don't have to have the mobile app in order to be able to do this. And that screen is going to, again, summarize the details of the shift we need coverage on. And they're going to see a green button and a red button, one for accept and one for decline. Along with it, a drop-down menu for their preferred pay type. Now, everyone will be receiving the text message at the same exact time because the system already knows who should get it, regardless of who may have accepted first or last. So when it comes time for us to view who has signed up for an open shift, we're going to select Award Open Shifts. Now, I might have some older ones we might be able to look at. Yes, there is. And let's push that a little further back, perhaps. So once you have selected the open shift, it's going to show you everyone who had accepted. The person at the very top is the one who should be awarded the open shift based on your rules. So in that case, it's me. Now, I may have not been the first person that signed up, but because of the amount of hours of overtime I have on the books, or just maybe where my name falls on that rotation, I'm at the top. I'm going to click on the award button at the bottom, and now that open shift has now been assigned as general overtime. It's been posted on the schedule. Anyone who you assign using this method will just have to show up for work. They don't have to put in their own slip. Now, by accepting or by working that overtime, maybe my name gets dropped down a little further down the list, so that the next time an open shift is available, I will be able to sign up for it like everyone else who's capable of working during that block, but I may be a little further down the list when it comes time to award it. Now, if you're not going to use the text messaging option, that means that you're going to use general notification instead of replacement policy notification. This way, the open shifts will just be posted under the employee menu under the screen called Open Shifts. Open shifts will be displayed just like this. And so anyone who wants to sign up for one just clicks on the open shift, and their request will be saved. Now, again, the awarding of the open shifts is handled the same way. So whether you're text messaging or putting it on a board, you're still going to highlight the open shift that you want to approve or award. And you'll have the award button at the bottom. So you can actually still use a replacement policy if you want. So you might have rules that govern how the list has to behave, similar to what we saw with text messaging, but you may want to start off by just allowing people to sign up for the open shifts and then use your replacement policy to narrow the list and to reorder the list properly. So I'd like to take a brief pause just to take any questions about what we've covered up to this point. And I'd also like to know, because we have a relatively small group, I'd like to have an idea of what process you currently use for filling overtime, if you plan on using text messaging or the sign-up, or if you're going to be just using a standard call list.
It's 10 o'clock, 4 o'clock. Yeah, I definitely want to try the putting it on, sending out text messages. That really solve a lot of problems, especially dealing with like the watch report.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, absolutely. South Windsor, will you be looking at text messaging, or what did you have in mind for filling your staffing shortages?
We'll try using text messaging as much as we can.
Okay. And so, have either of you attended the advanced setup class for the overtime replacement policy?
Not yet, not the advanced one.
Okay, and that's great. And if you took it any earlier than now, it might be pushing it. But I did want to mention that on your advanced setup and training classes, there is a class called Advanced Setup Overtime Replacement Policy. And we have one class scheduled for October 12th. There'll be at least one or two more for this month. And it's a great class to attend because this is where we're going to teach you how to build those rules up. What makes someone eligible to work overtime? Maybe they can't work more than a certain amount of hours in a row, or there needs to be certain rest period or break period in between shifts. Maybe certain time off activity makes you ineligible for overtime. So you get to learn how to build the rule sets that are really pretty unique from agency to agency, to be honest with you. Along with building the rules up, you determine how your lists are going to operate. Do we process based on hours worked, or do we use a rotating list of people? If you accept or decline, maybe that sends you to the end of the list the next time overtime is available. So it's one of those classes where you really start customizing this application to fit your needs. And so as long as you get the rules right, you can then start text messaging out those opportunities. Now, there is a follow-up class called Advanced Training, which is assigning overtime using the replacement policy and open shifts. This is where we go back and show you some of the steps I just covered with a little bit more detail. So anyone there who's going to be responsible for filling overtime positions using this method, you should at least attend the class or watch a video on it. It's actually very straightforward. It's building the rules that might be a bit of a challenge initially.
Definitely on the list of things.
Yep. Now, just going back to the supervisor section, actually using the daily schedule as our jumping off point, if I need to fill a staffing shortage on a particular day, I can go right to a call list. So I don't have to use text messaging. Depending on the situation that I'm dealing with, I may want to just start calling people. So you can always just take a shortcut right to the call list. We're always going to suggest moving over to advanced and then selecting from your overtime groupings. Now, you're not going to send text messaging out using this method. You're just going to call each person using the provided number, and you're going to accept or decline on their behalf. And once we come back to the daily schedule, that overtime is now posted on there for you. All right, I am going to, I'd just like to take another couple of minutes to take any questions that we have on approving time off, approving overtime, or some of the overtime, some of the staffing shortage overtime scenarios I just described. Okay. If there's no questions at this time, I'll go ahead and I'll just close up the mics once more. And we're going to move on to a couple of other topics found under the supervisor category. And we're going to look at this screen here called Assign Employee to Job. We're going to use this screen to assign people to work areas. That might be a patrol area. Or we can use this to assign someone to like an OIC work status or FTO work status. And those might be necessary, especially if we pay people for working in those specialty positions. And so the way this screen works is we select the shift that we want to work with, the dates, and we click on the refresh button so it finds who is scheduled to work on that particular day. I'm going to select one of my guys from the list, and at the very bottom, I'm going to use my list for job assignments to choose what that person is doing and for which hours of their shift are they doing it. And so I will enter this person as an officer in charge from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And when I click on the Save button, I'll receive confirmation that the job assignments have been saved. And if I was to move over to the daily schedule, that OIC is applied. Okay. Now let's take a look at the Supervisor drop-down menu, and we're going to take a look at another way of assigning jobs called Update Schedule Details. Here we can select who we want to assign. We can choose what types of items we want to assign, whether it's a job, a vehicle, or maybe another category of item. I'll stick with jobs. And over on the left, I'll see all jobs currently in my system. And over on the right, it's sort of an orangey type of color. I can now take that job assignment from the left and move it over to the schedule on the right. I can even move on to another category. Maybe not only am I assigning jobs, but I might be assigning vehicles. And when I'm done, if I was to move back to the daily schedule and go to October 5th, I should see those job assignments posted. Also under the Supervisor section, we're going to look at Manage Switch Requests. Anyone who has requested a switch through the system will be found under this screen, and in fact, I'll just select all switch activity for this year. So here we have the name of the person that initiated the switch, the schedule that they're coming off of, the shift that they're coming off of, and who is working for them, and what the payback date and shift is, all in one line. So I can click next to my request. I can see the details. So for this example, these two folks are working the same days. There's no change there. It is the shifts that they are swapping. At the bottom, you can click on the Approve button or Delete. And when you're done, click Save. Once you approve switch requests, they will be displayed like this one here on the 5th. Okay. So it's going to show who is working for that person in parentheses. One of the last screens we're going to look at under this particular section is called Change Schedule Times. This is what we use if we need to modify someone's work times for more than just a single day. Start with the date range for the time adjustment. You also have drop-down menus for this month, this year, year to date. Then select the individual you want to modify the work times for. And perhaps I'll select someone from my records department. And I could select multiple people if I needed to, but I think for this example that works. Next, select the shift that will be affected. Now, this particular person only works records. I could have also selected all shifts. But for this example, since she is only on one, that works just fine. And now I'm going to key in her work times. Using the next drop-down menu, I can apply the changes to a single day of the week. Maybe she works just a short day on Fridays. I'll choose Monday through Friday. So what that's going to do is, even though records may have been set up as an 8 to 4 shift, maybe she works a little later. That's fine. Enter the times and click on the Save button. Depending on how many times she's on the schedule for whatever period you selected, that's how many entries will be adjusted. Let's go back to that daily schedule let's find the records department. And notice next to Carla's name, her new adjusted hours are displayed. Now we're done with the supervisor drop-down menu, but I'd just like to go back to the schedule actions menu, which, if you recall, is the one that appears whenever we click on someone's name on the daily schedule. And so over on the left, you will be able to view the entry for the person that you highlighted, which might include overtime and time off entries. You have the ability to add comments. So even though I only highlighted one person's name, it allows me to add comments next to everyone on that shift. Now, you might use this to set instructions for maybe a certain part of a special instructions. Maybe you have someone working in a particular patrol area, but maybe there's a section in there you want them to just pay a little bit more attention to. And you can enter those details just by putting in maybe an address. Click Save, and those notes will now be added to the daily schedule. To remove them, just click on any name within the shift, go back into Add Comments, and just wipe them out. Also under Schedule Actions, we can move employees. I can take this individual and switch them over to another shift. Maybe that person is training on that particular day, so they will be moved out of their normal schedule and put into training. Let's go back to the daily schedule here, and for the next one on the list, let's go to my records division again. So off of the Schedule Actions menu, if I select Change Schedule Times from this list, I can adjust the times just for a single day. So unlike the other example I gave you, just for day-to-day changes, this might work well. Click on the Save button, and you're done. Let's go back to that daily schedule once again, and for our next item, we're going to look at some schedule switches where we may not have the officers or the employees submitting those. We might be applying it on their behalf. And for that example, I'll just use October 6th and some of the guys that I have on my days and nights. So to apply a switch, I am going to select the person that initiated the switch. And over on the left, I'm going to select Sub, Switch, and Reciprocate. Now you have four options. I'm going to stick with Reciprocate first. Now Reciprocate means that two individuals are going to trade schedules with one another. And that schedule trade or swap will be reported to payroll, meaning the amount of hours will be adjusted for the day. Shift differential will also be adjusted. So if you have someone who's now covering someone else's night shift and you pay differential on the night shift, that now gets transferred. Under Employee 1, again, we have the name of the person that initiated the switch. We're then going to select the person that they are switching with. And for this example, I'll just keep the same dates. They might just swap the shifts. Although in your department, you might be doing the exact opposite. It might be on different days. That's fine. But when you click on the Save button, now it shows, in this case, Jim Foster working for Jeff Morgan. Let's click on that item, and when we do that, you'll notice you now have the option to undo this swap. So let's undo that Reciprocate. We'll confirm undo, and it puts the schedule back to normal. Let's click on Jeff once again, go back into the same screen, but this time we're going to move over to Switch. And you notice that the fields really don't change. The difference is that a switch is not reported to payroll. It's really nothing more than a note that will be placed on the schedule for those days. Shift differential will not be transferred. Hours worked will not be recalculated in any way. Again, we have the same employee number 1. Select the person that is working for them and the date that's being traded along with the shift, and click on the Save button. Now it appears the same way as it did before, Jim Foster working for Jeff Morgan, but again, this one is not tied to payroll in any way whatsoever. Let's click on that item and let's undo it and put it back to normal. Going back into the same screen this time, we're going to use a substitution. This one's a little different. This is an open-ended switch. In other words, Jeff is going to come off of the schedule on October 6th for the patrol day shift. And we're going to ask someone else to work in his place. Now, this, of course, should be arranged beforehand. So at this point, we're just applying the change that both individuals have agreed on. Enter the times that that person is going to cover for the other. And in this screen, looks like I have to put it in AM and PM format. So now at some point in the future, Jeff here might end up working for me. So we'll have to repeat this process, or a supervisor would have to repeat the process. Now, when it comes to allowing an employee to request a switch, the ones that we looked at how to approve before, the only ones they can request are these two, because these two are not tied to payroll in any way. This one, however, is. They cannot request those. So if your switches mean that things like shift differential get reapplied to someone else, then you will have to make sure that you use this option for your switches. Because by them requesting these, the differential will not get transferred. Now, under time, time is a lot like a substitution. The only difference here is that comp time is being transferred. So in the event that I was working for Jeff Morgan, I would be given, in this case, because it's a 12-hour shift, 12 hours of comp time that would have been drawn from Jeff's bank. That's sort of a payment for me working for him. Once again, once Jeff is ready to work for me, maybe a month or 2 months from now, the time might get transferred back. Okay. All right, folks, so that covers the core functions of the supervisor screens based on VCS's recommended supervisor settings. I'd like to just open up the mics to take any questions that you have, whether it's approving time off, approving overtime, adjusting work times, filling overtime using some of the various methods we discussed. I'd be happy to take any questions you have at this moment.
Really, I think a lot of it's just a matter of playing around with these things. I mean, it's it seems pretty basic.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. A lot of this just requires some hands-on time. All right, folks. Well, if there isn't any questions for this afternoon's class, that concludes the session. Thank you so much for your time. The session is being recorded, and you will have access to that video recording. In about an hour's time, you should receive an email from us with a link to that video. And I'll just remain on the line for another 2 or 3 minutes or so, just in case there's any last-minute items you need me to cover. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time this afternoon, and please enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Almost the same way as you were putting on a job. that you're going to do your assignments, like the shifts, so I'm under base patrol, only one guy, so I just select the drop down card. And once you have those cards, then they can just drag and drop people onto those cards. Okay, well, if this is all year long, then I would recommend you an update schedule details. One that could be it. Not you, you can't put it in the things you want to do it for this month. When I think about good years, I can say, starting, January 1st all the way to December 31st, like my employees. And then here, I'm sorry, you're going to change the drop down from jobs to cars. And then this will be a list of all your cars. You just drag and drop each car onto that person under all. And what it's going to do is, for every day that they're working, that takes place between the fleet range, they'll be assigned to that unit number. Yeah, it makes sense. And by the way, the 5 buttons count in this right corner.